What's up, guys? Commissioner here. A couple of petitions were just filed regarding the ruling that was made earlier this week and clarification on what we voted in last week. Okay, very confusing. So I wanted to go ahead and address that. It started earlier today when I started looking into the rule book pretty heavily in highlighting all the sections that pertain to this kind of situation. And put them in the order of which they should be read and how we should process it in this situation. So I'm going to go ahead and just read you those sections and kind of talk about what should have happened, what did happen, that kind of stuff. So Article 3, Section 5, it says each club must field a roster each week, full roster. Jake didn't do that. It doesn't say what to do if he doesn't field a roster. It doesn't say he gets 0. It doesn't say someone gets slotted in, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Article 5, Section 8 says pretty much the same thing. Article 2, Section 3 says during the season, clubs may be required to cast a vote. So we realized there was an issue. We're going to cast a vote on the rule that should be added or changed. In Article 2, Section 4, Constitution may not be amended during the regular season except for 7 out of 10 votes agreeing on the change. Okay, so this rule was put in the rule book. You know, if we had something that wasn't necessary to be voted in, or to be, you know, a rule that's not necessary, but it'd be nice to have, or some people want it. If 7 out of the 10 clubs want it, and we vote that way, it gets in there. If not, it doesn't get in there, and that's it. That's the point of it. So we didn't receive 7 votes of the same vote for last week. Option 1 was he gets 0 points. Option 2 was that the lowest player on the bench gets slotted in. There were 6 votes for that, not 7. So technically, there was no rule that got put into place. But in this case, this rule, or Article 2, Section 4, doesn't say what do we do if 7 out of 10 votes aren't achieved for a rule that needs to be put in place, for a rule that's necessary to be put in place. There's nothing in the rule book for that. It's a clear hole in the rule book, okay? Article 1, Section 5 says the commissioner shall make no amendment to this Constitution or adjustment to the status quo in respect to any matter that requires a club vote or a vote of all the clubs. Okay, so by me putting out the memo with guidance from Brennan on discussion and looking at the rule book and stuff, that should have never happened. We didn't have the right to do that. You can't just make an amendment because you want to. Okay, so that's not what should have happened. So 7 out of 10 was not achieved. We have no rule that says in a necessary vote, you know, do we go in a courtroom like 12 angry men and wait till we get to 7 like we're trying to try a case, or what do we do? Okay, so petitions that were filed, memo that was written, none of that's really valid. I'm just saying that because of due to the 7-10 vote not being achieved, there's no rule in place. So any petition that references the memo is not valid because that rule is not in place. Currently, the rule that we voted on last week of lowest person on the bench is not in place because 7 out of 10 votes was not achieved. So what do we do in this case? Okay? Personally, I wanted to discuss trust because when if you trust me, like you trust me with trades, if there's a trade that goes through, some people don't like it. If I don't think it's 1,000% collusion, the trade goes through. So why not trust me in the same situation when I say, I know what's going to happen in this matchup. I know what would have happened. It's very, 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 very 1,000% obvious. I don't say 1,000 lightly. I don't say 100 lightly. I say 99% when there's a slight unsureness. 100's for sure, okay? And I know in this situation that Jake would have started Jaleel McLaughlin, who he spent $13 on Fab to cover his ass when Javonte Williams got hurt the week before. McLaughlin came in cleanup mode and had a pretty good game. His other option to start was Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Back-to-back weeks of less than 2 fantasy points. Not a good player. No one would have started him. To me, that warrants 100%. To me, okay? That's what I would choose in my best interest. If you told me, hey, Steve, we trust you, that's what would happen. Now, if you put your trust in me in this situation, here's how I would handle it. Jaleel McLaughlin, we would recognize that Jake would have started him. The matchup would have been a loss for Mikey T and a win for Jake. Okay? Mikey T should get a loss. Jake should not get a win for not starting someone. His punishment, and it's really a reward for everyone else in the league, is that he gets a loss. Okay? He gets a loss. Mikey T does not get a win or a no contest for not doing anything. Everyone would have loved to play Jake last week and be in the same situation where they avoided a loss based on him being an idiot. Okay? But what we can do is take 100% certainties and tell you what would have happened if he just paid attention 90 minutes before game, saw that Javonte was out, and put it in the backup he spent $13 in fab on. Might I add, he took a $10 fab penalty the week before. So he's spending money. He's spending money he now has less of because he broke this rule 2 weeks in a row prior. Okay? So that's what should have happened. So you could take that, or we can go back to the drawing board and we can say, hey, this is still an undecided matter. We can go back to the 7-10s vote and try to get that achieved. That's fine with me. But the only way we're going back to that is if we're going to get to that 7. And we might be 10 angry men in a courtroom and people having to convince everyone of what we're going to do. Okay? Because we have to get 7 to put a rule in place. So we're going to argue till our fucking brains fall out. Or you can trust me and say this is the decision that should be made. Mikey T, in this situation, it could have been anyone else, would get a loss. Jake gets a loss for getting the 0 points in there and for being an idiot and breaking the rule. He gets a loss. But no one gets a win. Jake is penalized by not getting a win and not setting his lineup. Mikey T is not penalized here. Mikey T is not penalized. Jake did not follow the rules and set a lineup. There's no rule that says what should happen to that player that he started in that lineup that got him 0 points. He shouldn't get a win for that when someone should have been in there. Just because we don't have the rule book completely filled out. There's no rule against it. There's just nothing there. So that's what we're voting on, you know? So he shouldn't get a win. If it was me, I would say the same thing. It'd be hard. It'd be hard to say, yeah, give me the loss. But when you're talking about the integrity of the league, that's what would have happened, and that is the most true situation for people actually fighting to gain ground in the standings. The people who are above them, I wouldn't want them to get a free win or a free no contest. You should get a loss and move down the standings. That's what should happen. That's it if you decide to put your trust in me and say that I know what's best for this league. I know what we should do, and it's that. That's what we should do. And I want you to completely don't look at this situation. Don't look at Mikey T. Don't look at Jake. Picture it as if it was you on either side of this. What would you want to happen? I think you'd want what's right to happen. Okay? And that's what should happen. But as a league, and as the rulebook states, I cannot make just an amendment by myself. Unless you allow us to add that to the league, to the format, or to the rulebook, saying if 7-10's vote is not achieved, the commissioner in this case will make the decision in the best interest of the league to maintain the greatest level of integrity of the league. So that's what I propose. If people do not agree with that, we can go to the vote. Okay? So I don't think we should. I don't suggest us going to the vote because 7 out of 10 may be hard to achieve, and also coming up with what are the options for that and what happens. It's just a convoluted thing. If you just trust me, like you trust me with trades and trust me to make the right decisions for this league and for the better of this league, you would know that this is the right thing to do. So with your trust in me, I would like you to respond and say that you agree with my decision. I don't expect everyone to agree because maybe you may be biased in the situation, but you shouldn't hold bias because it could be anyone else but you in this situation, and you wouldn't have any bias. You should look at the league as a whole. If your team's good enough, you'll climb back out, in any situation. So let me just summarize. Petitions that have been filed are not valid. The memo that was posted on Monday in the chat is not valid. We are back to last week when we voted on that the lowest scoring player on the bench gets slotted in. That was a 6-4 decision. not a 7-10. We are back at the 7-10 ruling, and we need to achieve 7-10, or you guys can vote as a group collectively to give me the trust and say that what I'm saying we should do is what we will do in this situation. So I'd like to hear your responses. Let me know if I wasn't clear enough, but that's what the rule book says. I don't want to hear anyone referencing petitions or the memo. Those things don't exist when you read the rule book in the order that it was, like when you read the rules through in the order that they're supposed to be read in. Okay? Those do not exist. A petition should exist when the commissioner has, you can file a petition when the commissioner makes a ruling on something, which I did with the memo, that you don't agree with, and you think you can get 67% of the people that are not involved to overturn that. To me, or not to me, there is no memo. The memo does not exist because we should have never got there in the first place, and that's it. So let me know how you feel. I know that was fucking long, and I didn't rehearse anything, I didn't write anything down. I'm going off the top of the head, but I just want everyone to know we got to a point where there's a 7-10 vote to be achieved. It was not achieved, and it's a necessary rule that needs to be added, and the rule book does not state what do we do if we don't achieve 7-10. So we're talking about the 7-10. That's what we're talking about. No petitions, no memo, no commissioner just adding his own rule. I didn't have the right to do that. The rule book says I shall make no amendment to the Constitution. That's what the memo was. So squash that. It's gone. Petitions, if your petition related to that memo, it's gone. Your petition related to a ruling, I have no right to rule unless you give that to me. And if you give that right to me, you can petition that. But that's all there is. So let me know what you guys think. Like I said, I know I was rambling on, but it has to be done. We got to figure something out. But nothing is set in stone right now. There's no rule in place for this rule. Technically, those matchups are undecided. Jake last week got the shit beat out of him by Colin. He played against me, and there was no player that he would have started. He had his lowest scoring player on the bench was Matt Breida, and him or Zach Moss. You know, they're not a 100% obvious choice on who he would have chosen. One was his handcuff. So what do we do in this situation? So let's keep it open. Let's keep it discussion. So all right.